Welcome to the Power Hour. I'm your host, Eugene Shatsman, and I'm super excited about today's conversation. This is another show that we got to record live in Vegas, and I am so glad that we got to do this one in person because I really think the conversation is incredible, and the beneficiary is you, our listener. Let me explain. I hear all the time that listeners like the show for its golden nuggets, right? The one or two little things that you can pull out and do differently in your business tomorrow, or something that you could look at more carefully, critically evaluate, or something you can learn. So I shared this with my guest while we were sitting and recording live in Vegas, and we challenged each other to go back and forth with golden nuggets for basically 20 to 30 minutes of this episode. So this is like golden nuggets on steroids. And in this episode is one of my favorite topics, and our guest is one of my favorite collaborators. Daniel Rostenne from Eyecarepro and I discuss very closely what marketing and technology opportunities look like for practices in today's environment. This is really fun because we both help practices with marketing, but Daniel's approach is very technology driven and mine is very data and testing and strategy driven. So together during this conversation, we tease out at least 10 to 15 things that every practice should be paying attention to when it comes to marketing in today's ridiculously fast-paced world of AI, Google, Facebook, email, SEO, website, and so on. Specifically, we talk about things like video, search engine optimization, search generative experience, patient recall, Google Ads, appointment scheduler, split testing, new features, and my favorite snack pack, and of course, so much more. I love the dynamic of this fast-paced conversation that we had, and I really hope that it helps you find some untapped potential in your practice. So again, reminder, this is a show, all the conversations, all the time that our team puts in, it's all to be a resource for you, for our listeners. So if you're listening today, I want to hear from you. Send me a note with your thoughts, ideas, what you'd like me to cover, who you'd like to hear from, or if you just have questions. This helps me plan all the future shows and make sure that this continues to be a great resource for you, the listeners. You can do this directly by contacting me at eugeneshatsman.com or at the Power Practice website. Either way, I'm here to support you. I'm here to hear from you, and I'm excited to know what you think. Right now, let's jump into today's conversation.
All right, welcome everybody to the Power Hour. We are live in Vegas, and we are here in the Avalux booth. I am with industry legend and I think a dear colleague and friend, Daniel Rostenne. And the interesting thing is today we're talking about innovation. So a lot of people come to Vegas. This is a show about innovation. It's innovation and technology. It's very appropriate that we're doing this show in the Avalux booth. This is a newer product for the industry as people are exploring it. But I think, you have been running a technology and marketing company focused on innovation for several decades. And I think that you guys are constantly evolving to make sure that we're meeting the industry needs. And so there's lots of ways to approach this innovation question. And I'm excited to have you on the show, first of all, Daniel.
Likewise, Eugene. Thank you.
Well, so let's talk about innovation in general. And I think that when you think about innovation, the reality is that you have to start by thinking what are the kinds of things today that are driving innovation, and what's fueling the opportunities in the marketplace for innovators to step in and really make a difference.
I'll share some of my observations from Eyecarepro, but there are many aspects of the industry right now that are affecting innovation. I'm going to choose one.
Okay.
If you take a look, broadly speaking, as consolidation happens in the industry, private equity, etc., there's only so much complexity that large organizations can handle. And therefore, they tend to reduce the practice of optometry in most cases to maybe the lowest common denominator, which means the opportunity for practices to innovate and become specialty practices abounds because a lot of markets now are no longer serving the specialty market. So it's a different form of innovation. It doesn't mean you have to come up with something totally new. You can borrow what's out there, but if it's new to you, it's innovative to the practice.
Right. You can compete on service or compete on offerings that other people don't have. And as you're pointing out, as optometry sometimes drives towards a corporatized model, unfortunately, that means that there's fewer options available for patients in certain cases. And in fact, that's an interesting dichotomy because at the same time, what we're finding when we're looking at data, specifically data from Google and specifically data around demand, what we're finding is that, interestingly enough, there's more demand than ever for certain specialty services. For example, I was just looking at this in terms of demand. Demand for myopia management, 23 to 24 year to date, up 18%. 18% year over year. There's more patients who are more solution aware, who are looking for more solutions, and they're probably looking for them over and over because they're not always finding them.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, practices can do well by getting into obviously myopia and other specialty services, but they won't be found clearly if they don't have the content on the site. And it's interesting that now practices have the dual role of how do I educate Google about what I'm doing, but at the same time, how do I educate my patients about what I'm doing? And the two of them don't always want to receive the same education.
Right. And it's, obviously it comes down to content, right? The age-old concept in digital marketing, content is king, and then it was content is queen, and, there's something else going on. The reality is that content's important, but the types of content that are necessary, as you said, sometimes to educate a patient versus to educate Google, don't always agree. So what makes good content in today's environment, and for which purpose?
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at both purposes of the content. Google content still needs to be mostly written at the moment. And if it will be video content, Google looks for the transcription of that to determine what the content's all about. So Google needs written content, but as humans, we need video content. And so just like the Power Hour here, we're providing video content. You need to start providing that video content to your patient, or else they'll get to the site. Nobody's reading the Power Hour. They're watching it.
Right. And I think it's interesting because humans have we've evolved to respond to motion, right? Obviously, when you're out in the savannah and whatever, and the lion is running at you, we have evolved to respond and to pay attention and to remember things that are moving. And so you can read something and you'll remember some percentage of it. I don't know, 10% or something.
Yeah. The stats are that if you listen to something, you'll remember about 10% of it 3 days later. But if that's accompanied by any pictures, 65% of that will stick into your memory, and you'll have a much more meaningful learning experience.
So we're going to come back to video in a little bit. I want to ask you about a big trend from an innovation standpoint. Remember, this is the innovation episode. So AI, it's a big topic here at Vision Expo. I was asked to speak on AI yesterday. I think there's other speakers talking about AI on a regular basis. I know you guys are experimenting a lot with AI in your business. Let's talk about what's happening with AI in the marketplace and how practices could be using AI in a beneficial way.
A number of practices have started to adopt AI, but I think there's obviously the majority right now that don't exactly know how easily AI can benefit the practice. So let's take a simple example. You probably have policy guidelines, policy manuals, etc., for both how staff should behave in the office, for PTO, etc. You can simply take that, you can put it and create what's called the GPT, and you can feed that in, and now your staff have somewhere to go where they can easily ask questions about any policies, procedures, etc. that happen in the office, easily answered, saving obviously a lot of effort.
And it's a brilliant move because if you think about it, all of those questions are probably being asked to the office manager, sometimes to the doctor. These are some of the most valuable people in the practice, and sometimes their time is already short. And they don't have time for just a minute questions. Where do we put this? How do I reserve that? Where do I get that? Who do I call about this? And you're right. If you just take all of the stuff that you have, or even just record their answers and then plug that into the GPT, or plug the transcript of that into the GPT, you could have a really useful answer bot in your practice. I love that idea. I think that's great.
Yeah. And there's more things that the practice can do. It starts to get a little bit more complicated to leverage AI in the exam room. But the key is feed it the information that you have right now that's readily available, any policies and procedures about anything, how staff should go ahead and sell, how they should serve patients, etc. The second you have that, you can now have a bot that can help you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's lots of different ways that, there's lots of different applications of that same exact thing where you could create a bot, where you could have a bot that trains your staff, right? You think about all of the onboarding that you could potentially have in your practice. You got to explain the vacation policy. You got to do this. You got to do that. All of that stuff oftentimes happens in person in a time slot that's usually could be spent doing better things, or that person has to sit there and read. And we just talked about what happens when someone reads. Well, what if you take that stuff and you feed it to an AI avatar? First of all, you feed it into a GPT, and then you feed it to an AI avatar. And now the person can, number one, listen to it in video format. Number two, they can read about it I'm sorry, they can ask questions to the bot, and they can get all the answers that they need as they're onboarding the practice. Just another application of the exact same thing you just mentioned. Just a simple alternative application.
In fact, you don't have to be the one that creates the content. Your incoming patient calls are excellent content for AI to analyze all the incoming patient calls to determine how effectively your staff's answering the phone and actually converting those calls into patients. Most practices don't have the time to listen to each one, but AI can listen to each one and tell you how you're doing.
I love that idea. I will tell you, we've been testing in our business. We've been testing we've been testing a tool where the calls are actually answered by AI, because we've listened to lots of calls. I think tens of thousands of calls in our business, and what we've heard is that in general practices tend to waste money on the phone. And so one solution is what you're saying, is listen to the calls. We'll come back to that in a second. The other solution is answer the calls for them, right? And so of course you can have a call center solution, but I was curious in this last quarter, and my team and I tested a number of solutions that can actually answer phones for practices, and you can program these things. However, it's still not market ready. I've been testing it, and I think the latency is still not good, meaning that it doesn't sound like a natural conversation. It's too much of a pause when you say your thing, and then the thing starts talking, and then what happens if you interrupt it or something like that? So that's one point. I think another problem is that sometimes there's an issue with the actual content. It hallucinates a little bit. It doesn't necessarily provide all the right things. It doesn't say it exactly the way it should. But I think that technology is not so far away now. But what you can take advantage of right now, I think, is what you're talking about, which is listen to the calls, because there is this really big problem of a lot of calls, and especially in times of decreasing demand, which is a season that we might be in right now, where there's a little bit less demand than there was last year. And I think in all reality, one of the ways to combat this is to just be better with the opportunities that you have, to start measuring things. And one of the things that I challenge every practice to measure is, what is your capture rate on the phone? And there's technology that'll tell you that without you having to listen to every single one of those phone calls.
Yeah, I think that I was on a Power Hour with Bethany. It was a year or two ago, exactly about AI technology that can listen to the calls and give you excellent stats on exactly how well your practice is answering the phone, capturing the call, turning it into a patient, etc. So lots of good stats out there. What we're actually doing really is, you want to look at the entire funnel, is really where you want to go with this, because the phone call is just one aspect of the funnel.
Right. And when you say funnel, it's really like from the point that a patient becomes interested in finding a solution to the point the patient spends dollars in your practice, and hopefully the maximum amount of dollars in your practice. So there's a whole funnel, and we marketers refer to, top of funnel, bottom of funnel, content at the top of funnel. But in all reality, it's not a complicated concept to grasp, because what happens is that you have you have an initial thing that happens that prompts someone to potentially desire your services, and then ultimately they take steps and steps and steps and steps over time to become a patient that spends money and comes back more often.
In fact, we'll talk about lots of aspects of the funnel, and as a practice owner, and you listen to the points that we're making about how to improve the funnel, there may be 3, 4, 5 points in the funnel where you feel like the practice is doing well. But if you can catch 2 points in the funnel, and each of them can have a 10% lift, you're making a major improvement to your conversion rate. So optimizing the funnel is key.
Well, so I think this is where some of this innovation comes in, right? Is that if you think about everybody here at Vision Expo is here for a purpose. Maybe they're shopping for a piece of technology. It's going to make their practice better. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're looking to learn about something that ultimately can make their practice better. I think there's a whole concept of learning things and understanding new opportunities that are available to you to make improvements. And the things that we're suggesting from an improvement standpoint is things that can ultimately improve the overall the overall conversion rate, or the overall optimize every part of the funnel from somebody potentially becoming aware to somebody spending the maximum amount of money and getting the most amount of help in your practice. And so I think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting when we think about why people are here at Vision Expo.
Yeah, if you stretch the funnel concept, it's not just getting somebody into the office, not just getting an exam, not just getting a pair of frames, etc. purchased, but you can follow that all the way through to the billing and all the way out to the other end. There's so much of the funnel that people are trying to optimize, and that's why everybody's here and learning in all different modes here at Vision Expo.
Okay, so we're on the Power Hour, and I think one of the things I hear as feedback on the Power Hour all the time is that people are listening for a golden nugget in the show. People will listen to an hour-long show to find that, golden nugget or something super valuable that can help increase their practice. So I have a little bit of a challenge, and I want to see if you want to play along with me on this whole thing. Is that I think about how we can serve the industry best, sitting here at a show with thousands of people who are going to be listening to the show later, but also, we've got a little bit of an audience that's gathered here as well. What's interesting to me is I wonder if you and I can best serve that audience by just feeding those short golden nuggets. Because I think when people are here at the show, they're not looking for they're not looking to walk up to a vendor booth and then read their webpage for, read 10 pages of their website for 20 minutes. I think they're here for a 1-2 minute interaction that ultimately helps them make decisions. And so why don't we try something like that? What do you think?
A mix between elevator pitch and golden nuggets. We got elevator nuggets. Let's go.
Elevator nuggets. This is golden elevator nuggets. This is totally appropriate for Vegas. I could totally see someone creating some golden elevator nuggets at some point in the future in Vegas. So why don't we try this? I mean, we both have expertise in practice growth. Let's set some ground rules. This cannot be a commercial for National Strategic. This cannot be a commercial for Eyecarepro. Though I think both companies do an excellent job. We're both in the same space. We serve the market slightly differently. However, we both learn from the things that we're doing, and we can both educate from the things that we're doing. So let's try. Let's try to use this innovation episode to educate the marketplace in short, bite-sized chunks that ultimately can help provide short insights and fill this episode, fill the rest of our time here live in Vegas with some golden elevator nuggets.
If I may lead off, then Eugene, I will start at the top of the funnel.
Okay.
You can't get a patient unless the patient actually comes and schedules an appointment. How does Google know if they should be sending you that visitor?
Okay.
So, golden nugget number one. Google's obviously in the business of making money.
Okay.
They only make money if Google does a good job of sending people to good websites. You could have built a website yesterday, though. It says all the right things. How does Google know that you're actually a real business? They look for what are called off-page links or off-page indicators that you're a good practice, which means you got to get out there and get links from all sorts of businesses in your community. Those links are the strong signals that you send to Google. We're a legitimate business. Give us the traffic. When Google does that, they're confident that the visitor is going to have a good experience. So, yes, your website has to say all the right things, but if you don't have those off-page signals, you're not going to do a good job online.
Yeah, and I think you've heard maybe them referred to as backlinks.
Got it.
There's a backlink strategy for your off-page SEO. That's a great way of explaining and demystifying it, Daniel. And I think that there's a real value to making sure that there are as many websites referring back to your website as possible, because then Google recognizes that you are, in fact, a valuable contributor of content.
The more in your community, the better. The more local backlinks. Those are best.
Yeah, and you know what?
So now, Eugene, once they find you, they're looking at you on Google. Let's throw it over to you.
Okay, fine. Next golden nugget. Why don't we tackle reviews? Okay, so I think everybody is at this point aware that reviews are important. I remember close to a decade ago when I was trying to shout from the rooftops and say, I think these things on Google called reviews are going to be important. In all reality, I think at this point, more than half of the marketplace trusts Google reviews more than a recommendation from a close friend or family member, which I think is saying a lot for the value of those little stars on Google, right? The truth is, and this is, nobody's super surprised, you need more than 40 reviews to be taken seriously. If you don't have 40 reviews, I'm not really sure that, I think you need help, right? Obviously. And so we all agree, more reviews. And then there's data that says more recent reviews. You have to have reviews within, I think 57% of people say they're only looking at reviews left for your business within the last month. So you got to have a lot of reviews every week in order to feed those people who are curious about what are people saying about your business recently. So here's my golden nugget. That was just the setup.
It's pretty good.
Okay, well, the setup's pretty good, but I think that the real golden nugget is that most people get reviews using a piece of software. that piece of software is probably doing the same thing today as it was doing 2 years ago and 3 years ago. My suggestion is treat your reviews like a science experiment. Split test. You have 20 people come into your practice today, send half of them one message that requests a review, send the other half another message that requests a review, see what you learn. We've been doing this. We've I think, sent hundreds of thousands of messages requesting reviews for our clients over the course of the last year or two. And what we've learned is that, you can split test all of them. And we're constantly split testing, I think, 6 or 7 versions for all of our clients. And what we're finding is that some patients in some parts of the country are responding well to one type of message. Some patients in some parts of the country are responding well to a different type of message. But in all reality, the one pattern that we found, for example, is that if you have a question in your review request, so for example, something like, could you please let us know about your experience, ? That performs 58% better than if you have something like, we'd love to hear about your experience. Please click this link. So a question tends to perform better than not a question. And that, is one of the tests. I'm not saying that everybody should always go just change to only questions, because then you're not testing. So my real insight, the golden nugget, is treat your marketing, and especially your reviews, for example, because we know they're important in helping patients make decisions. Treat your marketing like a science experiment. Split test, split test, split test. And when you split test reviews, challenge the norm.
The easiest way to do that, practically speaking, set one message for a month. Look at the reviews you get for that month. Change the message up for the next month. You don't have to go all scientific. This will be a very easy way for a practice to test.
Absolutely. I think that's the easiest way to do it. There's also software out there that'll do the scientific test as well
for you. Now, you're getting a lot of reviews. Let's move to the next golden elevator nugget, which is people come, they look, they see.
I like this, by the way. We're going to brand the whole concept of golden elevator nuggets. I'm not sure. It sounds good now. I mean, maybe tomorrow we'll reconsider.
Feedback is welcome.
Yeah. Well, all audience members, please tell us.
Now, once you've got the reviews, obviously people are coming looking at the reviews. What impact do reviews have, and do responses to reviews have an even greater impact?
Yes.
Everybody obviously intrinsically feels that responding to reviews is better, but the magnitude of difference that it makes is huge. The number of people, 3/4 of all people trust companies more that respond to reviews. Google says that if you respond to reviews, you've got a 1.7 times higher chance of being considered far more trustworthy. Not only that, but 89% of all people believe the review responses, and 76% are likely to actually go with the company based on what they read in a response. So review responses are off the charts important, but they're often a drain in the practice. Any advice on how to get review responses in there, Eugene?
Well, I think that's a little bit of a setup, Daniel, because I know that Eyecare I mean, we said but
I didn't say anything.
You didn't say anything, but you know what? I'll put in a plug. So I know you guys offer, you build a technology that automates review responses, and in all reality, I think you can't have the same response to every single review. So what you have to do is have different responses to different reviews based off conditional logic, and I think that would be a way to save time, right? And I don't know if you guys are
precisely what we do.
Right. I don't know if you guys are thinking about putting AI into that. That would be super cool if you could somehow build SEO signals in that and build AI into that. That would be incredible.
Precisely what we're doing next.
All right, great. Man, well, I'll contribute to your roadmap. I'm happy to do that. Ready for another golden nugget?
Yes.
All right. So let's think. Okay, so people are on Google. They have found you. Where have they found you? More often than not, they will have found you in the snack pack, right? The snack pack is a decision driver. We know that people make decisions in the snack pack. We also know that people make decisions from your website. But the big interesting part is what percentage of people, how often is your snack pack listing going to come up versus how often are people actually going to show up to your website? And I think what people don't realize is that 84% of the time, your Google business profile, which is the thing that shows up in the snack pack in that little pack of 3 with the reviews, that thing is going to be seen 84% more, or no, 84% of the people are going to see your Google snack pack listing. 15.6% of people are going to see your website. So what does that mean is, I think people have a meticulous level of detail that they invest in building their website. People spend a lot of time critiquing the content, reviewing the pictures, understanding, keeping it updated, all of that stuff. there's a lot of effort that goes into your website, but let's understand that that's only 15% of the views that come in, and that's 15% of people are going to see that. 85% of the people, or 84% of people, are going to see the stuff that's on inside your Google business property. So are you keeping those pictures current? Have you updated them with some video? Have you made some improvements? Is that accurately reflecting what your practice really looks like and the message that you're trying to send to your community? Because that's where you're going to get more views. And so that's the golden nugget, is that make sure that you realize that that's where the eyeballs are. And so that's the thing that you're optimizing first, and sometimes more often than your website.
Well, exactly. Would you consider spending 5 times as much money and effort on your Google business profile as your website? Most practices obviously don't. They spend the opposite, far more time on the website, but 5 times as many people viewing your Google business profile than they do the website.
And that's a relatively recent trend, because that number has been climbing and climbing and climbing. And what we've also found is that the conversion rate from the website, from the Google business profile, if you're ranking, is much higher. Much more, many more conversions come from your Google business profile than your actual website.
In fact,
wait, is this the next elevator nugget?
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's go.
Perfect segue. In fact, Google has introduced something called Google Reserve, where now Google will actually put book now, schedule exams now, buttons all over your Google business profile, all over your Maps listings, all over your Google listings. I know this isn't a plug for Eyecare but it so happens we're one of the only companies in the industry right now that is able to put that Google Reserve book now link, and it's proving to have a 20 to 30% increase on appointment conversions, which means there's even more opportunities to optimize your Google business listings right now with Google Reserve.
And, I've seen that. And what it looks like is what a typical Google business profile that has been optimized looks like is that if you scroll down, it says appointments, and then there's a link for appointments, but you got to scroll down. Your thing that you're talking about, and it's actually available in a lot of like hair salons. I'm not sure why Eyecare it came to like kind of last, but it's available in hair salons. You can do it in the Minute Clinic. If anybody looks up a CVS Minute Clinic, they'll be able to see what Daniel's talking about. But there's a button that says book now right at the top. And if you click that button, book now, then you could potentially, I think more people are naturally going to click that thing. And it's really kind of interesting, the impact that it has.
Actually, according to Google stats, 70% of all the appointments booked through the book now are new patients. So it's a great driver for business to the practice.
The other part of that, if you really think through the way that the patient is looking, the patient has less time than ever to make a decision. And this is another decision driver opportunity to drive more business to your practice.
Now, if we continue down the funnel, now at this point, the patient has reached the practice's website.
Okay.
And we know how to construct a nice website. We don't need to tell anybody about that. But Eugene, I'm going to challenge you to hit us with the next nugget, which is, I've got a website. It's operating pretty well. I want to make it better. What should I do?
Okay. If you've got a website, I think the first thing you should do is change your mindset about the role of that website.
Okay.
I think everybody needs to just understand the purpose of a website is to drive conversions, right? Conversions is basically a phone call or an appointment click, or if you don't have an appointment scheduler, then maybe it's a form fill. But in all reality, the purpose of a website is to turn visitors into patients. Okay, fine, we understand that. And so I have to ask the question, why most people only build a website once every 2 or 3 years and then treat it like a flashy brochure. And then when it gets outdated because, you change doctors or your location looks better,
or you got
bored or whatever, or wasn't working, at that point, you then decide, okay, I'm going to build a new website, a new flashy brochure. I'm going to update my digital brochure, and I go next. In our opinion, and it's kind of in line with the point I made earlier, is treat it like a science experiment. Why not treat it like a science experiment, and why not challenge and test everything? A website is a really easy place to test, and you can create one experience for visitor A, one experience for visitor B, even if they show up to the website at the exact same time. One goes to a slightly different version of the website at the other. Now, I wouldn't have 2 websites, but I might change the button color. I might change the what the button says, because those are the things that people click. And what we found, which is kind of interesting, is that by just changing the language on the button, on the conversion element of the website, you can get a significant difference in results. So, for example, Daniel, we found that if you change the language to include the word your, ownership, something about your, on a desktop device, that drives conversions by over 20%, meaning you can get 20% more conversions from the same from the same amount of people. You don't have to pay for more people to come to your website. You don't have to pay for more ads to drive people to your website. You can just get 20% more people to click the book now button or schedule your appointment on desktop. But we also found that doesn't work on mobile. On mobile, the thing that works is urgency. So schedule an appointment now, book now. The now on mobile, urgency makes sense. So you might have to consider a slightly different experience for your mobile users versus your desktop users in terms of conversion rates. But in order to optimize your conversion rate, you just constantly have to keep testing. And that might be what works today. I challenge everybody to run enough tests so that you know what works today, what works tomorrow, what works the next day, because that's really where the opportunity is just to keep testing and optimizing.
Agreed. Now, I mentioned earlier that the funnel is so deep, you can pick any couple areas in the funnel to optimize will have a big impact on your conversions. Now, you talked about book. Booking requires an online scheduler. I'm sure many practices out there have an online scheduler, but not all. And if you don't, you're missing a huge opportunity. About 2/3 of all patients prefer to book online, and those that aren't booking online are phoning your office. A quarter of them are phoning your office when it's closed. So that's actually just a very huge, simple drain on the potential patients that you have. Put the scheduler in, make sure it's available all the time, obviously, and you'll get far more patients out of it.
What percentage of practices out there do you think don't have a schedule and just have a fill out a form to request an appointment type of thing?
Now you're embarrassing. I don't know the stat, but I feel like it's heading, maybe it's about 30-40% do not have a schedule. Do you have a better number?
I don't, but I was just curious what you found. I found that it's a surprisingly high number, and oftentimes it's not because the technology isn't available to them. It's because they made the conscious decision to say, I don't want to do this because I don't want to empower the patient to book an appointment because they're going to book the wrong type of appointment and my schedule is complicated and I don't want a patient to the reality is you're missing something like 20% of appointments if you're not if you don't have that schedule. You could have a lot more appointments in your practice if you just had that scheduler built into it.
And in fact, not all schedulers are created equal. If you're imagine you're going to look for an appointment, you land on the website and the first thing that it says is available appointments versus what is your name, insurance, what kind of appointment are you looking for, which doctor. You're 5 steps in before you see what's available. At that point, the second people don't see an appointment they want, they're gone. But you've made them go through these 5 steps. Much more effective to show appointment slots right up front. You'll get a lot more conversions.
True. That's a really, really good point. I think that's having a scheduler and having an optimized scheduler is absolutely important. Great golden elevator nugget.
Now, they're on the website. Lots of ways to convert. We talked earlier about content and what content. Eugene, in your experience, any particular content that's going to help increase conversions on the website?
So, we ran this test, and I just keep talking about testing. This is the mindset, right? Treat marketing like science, right? That's the big if it's any takeaways, your marketing needs to be scientific. So one of the scientific experiments we ran had to do with video. So we did something which was kind of weird, which is we took pages that we knew weren't going to have traffic increases to them, and we just added videos to them. Some of them were long videos, some of them were short videos, some of them were, quick overview videos, some of them were kind of more sophisticated. And what we learned very quickly was that videos, those same pages with no extra traffic, those same pages drove very different results by simply having a video on there. So, and those results, some of them you would expect, some of them you might be surprised. One of the surprises for me, one of the things that I expected was, okay, people spend twice as much time on the website. Okay, not
the video,
right? So now they're watching a video. That kind of makes sense. Okay, not surprising. One of the things that did surprise me, however, was that you got more phone calls. And you know how much more phone calls you got from people who visited that page?
Because of video.
Because of the video, the overall conversion rate went up by 68%. 68% increase in conversion rate because people added video to the website. Everybody listening to this, everybody out there, you should be adding video to your website because that's content that's resonating with the patient. Just like Daniel was saying earlier, the written content is helping Google understand the website. The video content is helping your patients make decisions.
they invest more time into it, and I guess it's got this implicit, well, I've invested enough time, let's go.
Yeah, and I see what I see what I care about. I mean, the video obviously can't be just total junk. You can't just have a video of, I don't know, like a cat walking across the parking ladders. Maybe actually that might be an interesting one.
You should test it, Eugene.
I will
in
test,
the interest of science.
Yeah, in the interest of science, we'll test like random pets walking across the parking lot for practices.
On the topic of content, there's something interesting, obviously, that's happening now, which is with the advent of AI everywhere, the way in which people query is changing. Because it used to be that you went to Google, optometrist near me that does myopia. But now you're used to asking AI very complex queries, such as, I have 3 kids, they're this age, one of them has astigmatism, one of them needs this, and I need to bring them all to get an eye exam, but it has to be after school, and it has to be in this area. And the query goes on and on and on, and there's even price mentioned in the query. Now think about it. Is your website providing the information to AI to answer that question? And 99 times out of 100, those answers are not found on your website, but people are asking that way now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Google is just trying to read the content and summarize it and put it in front of the user, right? And it's trying to put it in front of the user without that user ever going to your website, and sometimes it'll cite your website. So, I mean, it's fascinating to me how you have to have one set of content for Google, and I mean, how would you even create that content?
Well, I'll back you up one step. Think about what Google's doing. They're trying to provide all the answers up front with a Google Reserve Book Now link. They don't want any traffic to go to the website.
That's right.
But how would you create that content? Well, right now, I would just urge our audience to consider all the questions that are asked when a patient comes into the office or is on the phone. They want to know how long it's going to take. They want to know if the things are going in the eye and how long that thing is going to take for my eyes to stop dilating. They don't even know what it's called. They want to know price questions and answers. They want to know how long things take. Do I have to buy the glasses from you? Do I not have to? I can get my prescription or not? You can ignore those questions and say, I don't want to put them on my website, but they're asking. And now what's going to happen is Google is going to be drawing that information. So what I just urge you to do is consider the questions that you're asked right now. Talk to your web person and just read them the answer that you would give and have them put that on the website. Google will be digesting that information and using it in the search results.
Yeah, I think that's such a profound, simple thing to do, which is just simply keep like a notebook in each exam line or in each optician's top drawer. Like anytime they're asked a question by a patient that isn't in that notebook, just write it down in the notebook and then tell your web person, hey, there's a question that, could create content around that.
And then just start answering. Now, from there, obviously, there's a final aspect of the funnel, which is the patient has been in the office, and now you can start to recall patients afterwards, right?
Yeah. So this is where I've been trying to challenge the norm for a really long time when I think about this, because in the past, I think a lot of people talk about recall and reactivation in the same way. I'm going to kind of I'm going to delineate it and say recall is getting patients in who should have been in, because it's 12 months, maybe 13 months, whatever. Reactivation is anybody over 13 months. And we've had success going out from 13 to 60 months out since the last visit. 5 years since the last visit, you can bring that patient back. In fact, we found that 13 to 60 months, we can bring 20% of patients back. And we can do it much faster than they would have normally come back, or if at all, right? And the way we can do it is, again, you have to challenge what is currently happening. In the industry right now, most people are using software, and that software does something. And if you look deeply, one of the things that it's doing is that software is simply saying the opportunity for a patient what that software is saying is, hey, Daniel, it's time for your next eye exam. Please click here to schedule.
60 months, 13 months, doesn't make a difference.
Right. Well, it usually sends it at 13 months, maybe 15 months, maybe 18 months, maybe 24 months.
But the message never changes.
But the message never changes. And the reason it doesn't send it more often than that is because they don't want you to unsubscribe. Well, if you're going to send the same message, if I look at my phone sent, if I look at the text messages that are coming in from this one number, and it's all the same message over and over and over again, I'm just going to unsubscribe. And people don't want to lose subscribers, so then that's why they send the same message, but they don't send it too often. I would say the logical thing to do, which is something we've tried to do, which is we'll send different messages and send them more often. and try to make those messages useful to the demographic. If it's a younger patient, maybe send them a fashion-related message. If it's an older patient, maybe send them a disease, an eye disease, eye health, overall eye health-related message. But of course, keep in mind that the goal is to book an appointment, but send them something different every time you communicate with them. And I believe you should be communicating with them once a month if they've missed their appointment, because that demonstrates that you care about them and you care about their eye health, and you're doing it in a way that is, in fact, that they can be receptive to. And what we found is when you do that, you can get 20% of those patients, 13 to 60 months, you can get 20% of those patients to come back.
Well, that is the preeminent approach to caring for your patient's health. I care about your health and I want you back. Now, I would be remiss in participating in a Power Hour episode if I did not talk about Google Ads.
That's true.
Because we can look at all the marketing we want and all the conversions and everything, but there is one magic button, which is turn on Google Ads, and if properly constructed, it should send you patients.
Okay, yeah, and this is where, I think you really do have a lot of expertise. I think that one of the things that happens is that people waste a lot of money on Google Ads because they do hope that it's that magic button, so they plug in a budget, $500, $2,000, whatever, they push the button, and bam, nothing happens.
So let's take a look at what impact Google Ads actually have on a practice. Now, you might not realize this, but let's take a scenario whereby you're booked out for the next week, but the next 3 weeks after that are not booked. Does it help for you to run Google Ads this week? And the surprising answer is no, because it turns out that most of the appointments that are generated by Google Ads are generated within 24 to 72 hours after the ad, which means if you're booked this week, running Google Ads this week is not going to help you very much.
So the people who are clicking on the ads want an appointment 24 to 72 hours.
That's correct. That's 1 to 3 business days out.
That's an interesting insight.
So now what happens is you should actually be looking ahead 24, 72 hours. What's my availability like? But not just that. Your availability might fill up naturally on its own because it always has some kind of lift just by people calling in and the recall. So you have to now judge carefully. Is it going to hit that mark? If not, do I need to pump in some Google Ads to get that up to the right volume? So it's not so simple. If somebody's running Google Ads for you and they're not quite aware of these dynamics, it may be money wasted.
So what you're saying is that somebody needs to be aware of what your schedule looks like when they're running Google Ads. Otherwise, you could potentially be wasting money on Google Ads. Unless your schedule is wide open. You have no appointments that you could definitely run some Google Ads.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think we just went through what do you think, 10 golden nuggets, hopefully?
The elevator's full.
Perfect. I like it. I am really, really curious, and I see some live audience members here who seem to be interested in some of these golden nuggets. I'm really curious in terms of there's going to be thousands of people who listen to this episode. I am very, very curious whether you and I should continue, if we should challenge ourselves to continue doing these short, bite-sized chunks of golden nuggets for practice growth. And, whenever we discover something or we learn something, or, again, when we get asked a question and we have an interesting insight, maybe we should just continue doing this, in our separate organizations and to our separate client bases. I think we should, I think it's a great way to help with educating the industry and supporting the overall growth and helping the industry expand.
Agreed. It's basically, this is how people want to learn. A short, bite-sized video that's informative. But Eugene, we just have to continuously challenge each other to make it a real aha moment, not a duh, I knew that moment.
Right.
Let's make it a real aha moment that's actually worth that minute.
Okay, and what's the difference?
A duh moment is, yes, thank you, I know that reviews are important. An aha moment is, did you realize exactly when you have to ask for reviews, how many reviews you should be getting, at what period of time, how many more than your competitors do you actually need to know how many reviews? So that's the difference between, yes, thank you, I knew that, versus, aha. That's a good point. I didn't realize that.
That's great. Okay, so I think
I'm in.
I'm in as well. So we'll challenge ourselves, and I'll ask the audience to participate and just tell us if this is useful, if this is interesting, if we should continue doing this and publishing
these. And if there's any particular topics that they want us to cover from a marketing perspective, let's do it.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Well, Daniel, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Power Hour. I think there's been a fascinating discussion. Again, sitting here in an innovative booth that provides an innovative service, we're sitting at a trade show where people go to learn. I'm so excited that you got a chance to join me on the show and to help share some of the things that you're excited to teach.
Thank you, Eugene. The Avulux booth, as you can see, has been busy most of the time we've been here. No no thanks to us, but video does help.
Yeah, maybe it is thanks to us. Maybe everybody just showed up, and we'll see. But it's exciting, and thank you everybody for joining us today live, and thank you everybody for joining us today on the show. Daniel, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Eugene.
Hey there, it's Eugene, and I've got a question for you. Do you do medical billing in your practice? What if we took 10 charts and looked at them pretty closely? Would they be good enough to pass an audit, or would you owe the insurance company some money? Or would there be some found revenue that you could put back in your pocket? So looking at 10 charts is a new service that's now available from the Power Practice, and it's called the Power Audit. What happens during the Power Audit is that some of the most knowledgeable billing experts in the country are going to do a friendly audit on your charts and see if they can find opportunities. By the way, in auditing hundreds of charts, 9 out of 10 charts they look at, they find something. And typically that something fits into 2 categories. 1, something that better protects your practice, or 2, something that can make you more money. In fact, almost every single audit they do uncovers underbilling areas where you can get paid more for what you already did. So let's just play it out. You send them your medical charts, and a few weeks later, they provide you with a detailed report and analysis, a write-up, a coaching guide that helps you prevent any issues in the future. And again, helps you get paid more for what you're already doing while protecting your practice. So if you're doing any amount of medical billing in your practice, this is a service that's well worth the $2,500 it costs. And as a limited time opportunity, 10 listeners from this episode can get a $700 savings certificate for the Power Audit. So the price is only $17.99, but the opportunities that the Power Audit uncovers are worth many, many, many multiples of that. So go to the Power Practice website. Up near the top, you can click Request a Power Audit. Now, you're not committing to pay anyone at that point. You're just locking in your $700 savings. But you will get a chance to schedule a 10-minute phone call to get your questions answered and to see if the Power Audit is a fit for your practice. Again, that's the Power Audit on thepowerpractice.com.